Welcome to episode 10 of the SNARLcast about indie wargames and their design, coming to you from Snarling Badger Studios. I'm Adam, and I'm here with Vince. How you doing, Vince?
I'm doing great, Adam. I'm back after much travel, 6 airline flights, 4 days, multiple videos, TMX. Oh my God, it was a weekend. I am exhausted, but you are even more exhausted because you had to run the whole convention. So if Adam feels tired or sounds a little tired this game, I don't want to hear anything about it in the comments. I want you all to be nice to Adam because he is a trooper and he runs an amazing convention where I had an awesome time. And there's so much work on his shoulders for that. It was great, dude. It was great.
It was fine. It was it was a good time. People who were there had a good time. I've had many people already ask me like, "Oh, what are the numbers like? What are the numbers like?" And I'm like, yeah, it was. There were more games run, but I think there were fewer players, but not by a ton. But that's fine.
No, it felt good. Here's what I'll say. Next year, y'all better come out to TMX because it's a good time. We had so many games going on. It was great, like constantly running. People were just playing games.
I think also I should probably market it better next year. That's probably part of it too. We did have that discussion. I am bad at that. So, but yeah, it was a good time and it went pretty well and people had a good time and yeah. So that's like honestly between launching the game Rain and Iron and then the next weekend basically doing doing TMX, like that's kind of the culmination of like the first half of the year to some degree.
Yes,
at least on me. And then basically I've got to go to Gen Con, I've got to go to Nova, and I've got to go to Dragonfall, which is not even that far away. It's like 2 hours drive. And that's mainly about it as far as any more travel for me, I think, this year. I mean, knock, I guess, on wood. I don't know if I'm going anyplace else, but I mean, well, maybe, if we're doing VinciCon or something like that, potentially, or something. I don't know. But
we will be, yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, it's that point where you get to June and then you can kind of like hopefully take a breath. But it's cool. Otherwise, what
I got to get on a flight for work in about 28 hours.
Yeah, that's no good. That's no fun. That's a bummer. But what have you been working on besides traveling and waiting to get on another plane?
Yeah, well, so obviously, yes, I taught a couple classes at TMX, so that was great. Thank you for those who came out and took the classes. It was very fun. Good crew, good students. I think we had a lot of fun. I am finishing up. I'm in the last stages of finishing up this Spira Mirabilis dwarf bust. It was my side project because I put it to the side to work on a bunch of other stuff for videos. So now I'm just finishing it out. And then I have a really big project that I'm going to work on next, which I'll talk about in future episodes. And then also, obviously, I am putting the final touches on the Art of book, and I am beginning, which we'll talk about deeper, the whole process of the writing for Snarl for the fall minigame that comes out in the zine.
Every since 2023, we've been putting out, like, our first game was in 2021, and then we did Rain and Hell, and then we did Space Station Zero, and then we did Majestic 13, and then at some point we had the idea about doing a game in the spring, which that year was Death Wizards. Well, actually, no, it would have been 2023, so it would have been Majestic 13, and then Snarl came out that fall, like in November.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
2023. That was the first one, and that's when the micro game that was in that game or in that zine was called Tanks for the Apocalypse, and there was also a couple of add-ons for some of our other games. And then last year, 2024, we had the Great Goblin Argle Bargle was the micro game, and then there were again some add-ons. And the next project for us is to make Snarl 2025, and that will be
we're doing it again, baby.
Indeed. So so that's kind of the thing we've been doing, and you got to get one thing done before you can kind of really start hunkering down on the other one. As far as for me, painting and stuff like that, when I've been getting the chance or when I've been streaming on Twitch, which I just got done doing, I've been working on the Robot Legions. They are the cool robot models from One Page Rules. They kind of look like General Grievous. They got that sort of hunched kind of thing, and they're wearing a cape, and they got that pointy
Yeah, they
head.
have pointy heads. I like their
Yeah, yeah,
pointy heads.
yeah. So, they're doing a box that's coming out sooner versus later, I believe, called Broken Truth, which is a 2-player starter for Grimdark Future, their army game, sci-fi army game. And it comes basically with 2 1,000 point lists in it, and it's robots versus lizards, space lizards. So I'm starting by painting the
Tale as old as time.
and well, see, the thing is that I'm not usually an army guy, right? Like I'm usually a skirmish guy, but
Yeah.
like 1,000 points of these guys is far fewer models than 1,000 points of say Warhammer 40k. So
Well,
that's
that's
pretty
true.
cool.
Have you heard of Imperial Knights? Because I can get you down to fewer models.
Yeah, but okay, but they're still big. It's not. It's like in square footage, it's still a lot. You know what I mean?
Well, you
Like
could do a lot of the little baby knights. That would get you there.
that's
Well, it
but
wouldn't be a huge number. It'd be like,
they're
I
a
don't know, 8 of them or
giant pain
something.
in the butt to build, and yeah,
The little
and
baby guys? Nah,
oh
they're
my god,
fine.
they're not easy. They're a lot of parts as well. I'm in the process of slowly building one. Well, I want to eventually build 2 because then I'm going to turn them into a combat patrol for chaos. But good lord, GW's parts. See, here's the benefit to the robot legions is that they were 3D printed. So I just literally did
Yeah.
a base and they were done. I had to shave off a couple of support nipples, but that was basically about it.
Doesn't the world of 3D printing make you hate sprues more and more every day?
It
When
really
you
kind
like
of
get a
does.
really
Yeah.
clean, good looking 3D printed model, and
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, and here's this other thing, which is a sprue that I have to clip apart and put together these 15 pieces to get my one stupid rat or something. Yes, it
Yeah, and
drives me insane.
scrape all the mold lines and all that jazz. Yeah, no, I
Mhm.
absolutely. So, nonetheless, now for what I understand, the box they sent like us content creator nerds is a prototype box, which is why there's some 3D printed stuff in my box. When it comes out to people, it will be, I believe we were told, because One Page Rules was at TMX. They had a booth at
Yeah,
TMX.
they had the little
Param,
box.
yeah, Param was there. Param, that's his Discord name. Jefferson is his real name. He's a very nice guy. And he was saying that when the box comes out, Broken Truth, it'll be all hard PVC. So it's not like the same type of plastic as say like GW models, but it's also not like weird bendy like board game models either. It's a
Yeah, I'm
PVC
familiar
thing,
with
but
it. I've
hard.
seen some
Yeah.
models in that before. They're
So
generally fine as
yeah,
long as the casting is good.
so that should be fine, and that'll be cool. But I'm looking forward to working on these 2 armies probably over the rest of the year. I don't know if they'll just be the thing I do on Twitch or if I'll do other stuff, but I don't know. I've been having fun with them, so that's what I've been doing, and I've got a lot of terrain projects I want to work on over the summer as well now. So
That's what matters. Having fun
yeah,
with
yeah,
it. No, I'm
yeah.
glad. I'm glad to see you get like they hit the right size where you can have a small army in something. That's pretty exciting.
I think
I
that
tried to get you on the 1,000 point bandwagon a long time ago. I tried to get you down
for
to like
Age
a
of
holy havoc
Sigmar,
or something. Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. I was just telling somebody about that because I was like, yeah, I've got a whole bunch of test models that are all just night haunts that I use for like when I'm testing, and they're like, why do you have so many night haunts? And I'm like, well, because me and Sam were gonna have a team. Like he was gonna be Stormcast and I was gonna be Night Haunts. We were gonna go to this team tournament thing that's a fun vibe, not too sweaty. And Vince was on, and then 2020 happened, and then none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah, yeah.
everything blew up.
Yep.
Boo.
So considering Boo, I do, like I said, still have a decent amount of ghosts laying around sometimes where I'm like, I wonder how this wash works. And then just put it on a ghost and it's fine.
Sure.
So it's good to have that stuff. All right. I think now maybe is it time? Well, we've got do we need to talk about Rain and Iron, and am I on your show coming up this week?
So this week will be, yeah, okay. So let's obviously Rain and Iron launched. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do go
Mhm.
to Snarling Badger game. Or just go to Rain and Iron game. That's the easiest place.
Yeah,
RainandIronGame.com.
rainandiron.game is the easiest way.
Yes, that's where you want to go. But
It's
if
right there.
if you go to the Snarling Badger site, which should just be bookmarked, I assume, in your bookmarks at this point, because
Oh,
it's it's where you want to be hitting up on the reg.
You go up at the top, type in SNA, and it just fills out the rest.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm.
So Rain and Iron is out, the standalone sequel to Rain and Hell. You don't need the previous game to play it. Everything you need for your robot on demon action, solo, co-op, skirmish ready, however you like to play, you're good to go. Everything contained in that 76-page book, for the low price of only $11 for the PDF and $17 for the printed book plus the PDF. My God, what a deal. In this economy, I can't believe it.
It's nuts.
Yes, but now It'll probably be next week is the short answer to the question, Adam.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't even know. So I mentioned that I have to fly out at as of we're recording this, like 28 hours from now.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
day of Warhammer Weekly. I'm coming
Mhm.
back that same day. Both of those flights are going through Newark Airport. So I have literally no idea how that's going to all work. It's going to be a mess when the show will be. There's high chances of, flight getting canceled or delayed or
Sure. Yeah,
something
yeah.
horrible happening. And so we're going to play this week by a little bit ear. Probably not the show I want to be talking about it on, but we will get together next week and discuss it.
Not a problem. Cool.
Because next
Can
week
you
I will be back home and done with traveling for at least 2 weeks.
have you ever done a show directly from your phone in an airport?
That's a good question. I have done a show from my phone. I have not done a show from my phone in an airport.
That's probably for the best because there's a lot of announcements and that's going to get boring.
Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
that
yeah.
would be bad. But I have been in positions where I've had to do a show from my phone before. Yeah,
Well, yeah. But you get things done, right?
we get it done.
That's the
10
important thing.
years plus, we haven't missed a show. I won't miss this one either. I will do it from my phone. I'll go into I'll find a quiet room or something.
Yeah.
The expansion at the Appleton Airport is very nice. They have both a sensory room now and a quiet room. So you can go in and experience particular sensory experiences like little bubbles and lights and colors and soft
Oh,
sounds.
okay.
Or you can go in the quiet room and just chill with white noise.
That is it. I have not seen that yet. I haven't flown on Appleton in a minute, so that's good. That's kind of. I was
Yeah.
thinking it was going to be the sensory room and then the non-sensory room. Or non-sensory. That'd be sort of fun. Just
Yeah, the
full of
non-sensory room, sure.
just full of nonsense.
Just
That'd be something.
wackiness all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. Or I thought it would be the sensory room, and then you just turn off the lights, and now it's the non-sensory room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah.
That saves money. That's what it does. All right. Well, that's cool. So we talked a little bit about painting and hobby. I don't think either of us has played anything in a minute.
No, I got to watch Sam do some Trench Crusade. Obviously,
true.
I did a demo of Rain and Iron.
Also true.
So that was very fun. Took people through it. It was a really fun game. Everybody walked away real happy. It was good. It was a real good game. I've run this lots of times, and I know it sounds silly to keep saying it, but I am. And this is the direct comments that I got from the people who went through the demo. Were like, wow, when you first told me it was range versus melee, I didn't think this was going to work, but it all worked out. And it was like, it's good to see it come true. I know it's stupid. I'm not trying to toot my own horn because it's not even my work. It's Tom's good work. He's the one who gave all the good feedback, right? And did the development stuff. So thank you, Tom. But it's just good to see a plan come together, I guess, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And when you run the demo, you're obviously not just one person takes the robots and the other person takes the demons and then everybody else just gets to watch. When you do this, you were telling me that you had, because I was up at the front desk doing stuff and whatever, but
Yeah,
you were
multiple
running it.
people on the demon team, multiple people on the robot team.
Right. So you're kind of almost running one person's running one model, but on that team along with other guys and stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's a
so
little split up, exactly.
Yeah. And then that way you can definitely get more people involved and then other people are watching and all that kind of stuff. There was a definite group over there. I shot some video. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the Trench Crusade is fun to watch. We're going to do a Trench Crusade at some point in the future. I am very excited. I know you and Sam are getting some games in here and there.
Yeah.
I definitely want to do a deep dive. I gotta figure out which force I want, and so we're gonna talk about all the stuff in that future episode. Then I'll make a force decision and paint up my warband.
Yeah. I have what the heck do I have? Trench Pilgrims, and I have a force built and painted, and I like them. I do also want to do the Black Grail. Is it whichever one? That's basically it's very gross, sort of almost nurgly, and I think that's Black Grail.
Okay, gotcha.
But I do want to learn a little bit of. I was telling Sam about this just recently. I want to learn a little bit of digital kit bashing because the models are cool, but some of them I'm like, this guy needs to be holding a weapon. It would be just way easier if I could put the weapon in his hand and then have my 3D printer friend just print it out versus me trying to. I've never tried kit bashing with 3D printed models before.
Sure.
And I feel like that would be potentially fraught. You know what I mean?
I mean, if you can just digitally alter it, that's a great, just like we talked about earlier. That's just so much easier, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the idea, I think. But yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to next. So the topic for today's episode is going to be it's not how to make an indie war game. Instead, it's going to be more about how do we make our indie war games, because there's so many different ways to do it. You can't just be well, this is how it's done. We can tell you how we do it, and then we can be kind of definitive about that because we know how we do it. So That's kind of the idea, and then you can take from that what you will. But I think that there's also some demystification by learning how other people do things sometimes.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
right.
mean?
As the famous poet Montel Jordan once said, "This is how we do it." And
Yes.
so
Yeah, no,
this is going to be our process. We're going to try to get into a little bit of the nitty and the gritty here,
I like the gritty.
so that way you can really get a grip on kind of what we're doing. So because we talk about our games in development on this podcast, so now you'll be able to reference back to this episode and be like, okay, I know where they are. I know what
Mhm,
they're
mhm.
doing.
Yep, yep.
So there you go.
This is step 27B. Yep, 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 got
That's
it.
right.
Um, so, like, how we start, here's a quick story. Um, I was thinking about while I was, I think, maybe doing dishes or something. I don't usually do dishes. We usually have a dishwasher, but I was cleaning something because it's stuck. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm thinking about other things while I'm trying to do this, and I'm thinking about Majestic 12. Now, Majestic 12 is a what do you call it? A conspiracy theory that President Truman, sometime after the Roswell incident in 47, started this group of 12 powerful men, politicians, military guys, whatever, industrialists, scientists, to work on the UFO problem. And it's, if you can go look it up on Wikipedia, it's, I don't know if it's a real thing, but it's definitely a real conspiracy theory. And I've seen stuff in movies and TV about it and everything like that. And I was thinking about it. And I'm like, if they ever have to do a vote, it's an even number. So that's like they could have a split vote. That's kind of dumb. Why would they go with 12? What they should have
Right.
done was Majestic 13.
And
and
boom.
that was the title, and it hit me in the head, and then that's where the game came from. Literally, something as dumb as that while you're doing dishes can be a start. It doesn't even have to be a concept. It can be the title, and then you can build around it if you want to. It's probably smarter to build the concept and come up with the title later, but not always.
Yeah. So the first step in our process is what I'll call the ideation and brainstorming phase. Okay. And I want you to understand, listeners, viewers, whatever you all are, people in the future.
Consumers.
Hello. I hope the future's doing well. It's probably not, but that's fine. I want you to understand a bit of how Adam thinks. Okay. I'm going to tell a little behind the scenes Adam story here.
Sure.
So we both have like notes files that we keep ideas that come to us in. And Adam really is a better idea guy than I am. Okay. I'm a guy who likes having like a bit of a prompt, and then I can ideate on that prompt. Like the way my brain works is it doesn't start from zero very well. But if you give me even like 1 mile per hour, if you give me a little push, I'm off to the races. Okay. I'm like an old car that you got to like get a little jump. You got to get it rolling before it goes. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
But Adam is a great blue ocean thinker. And one of my favorite stories about this is when we were when we were going over ideas for mini games. Adam just literally said, "Well, I've got this note in here that says goblin game. Yeah, is that anything?"
Well, because I think it said Goblin Game ? And the
Yes.
question mark, and then it was like called Goblin Mode ? Which is and that was literally the entire thing. And I'd given you at that point, I don't know, 5-6 different like bits and pieces and stuff, and maybe sent them in Discord or copied and pasted them.
Yeah.
And like the next week, you're like, all right, the Goblin Game, I got this finished. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like,
exactly.
So, yeah.
Because it hit me, and then like I was off to the races. Like I saw the whole Great Goblin Argle Bargle and this fun little thing of the goblins playing their goblin game in the woods. And it just like clicked, right? And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to share the story, but the next game, which I will not say the title of, but the next big game for next year for 2026, which we're already working on, is a similar story. So when we give the behind the scenes commentary on that game, just know that it's a similar thing where Adam had like this phrase and he was like, "This is the coolest thing." And I was like, "I agree. That's super cool." And then I pitched something. It didn't work. I went to sleep. He's like, "No, it's not going to work." And I was like, "Okay." Because Adam's good at like, you've got a good mind for like finding the sort of problems with my initial crazy ideas.
Sure.
And then I went to sleep, thought of everything as I went to bed, woke up the next day, literally called you and was like, "Getting a call. I want to talk this through."
That's
and
right. Yeah.
talked it out and was like, boom. And he was like, "Okay, we're good to go." So anyways.
Yeah.
the the point I want to make during ideation and brainstorming is that like we throw out a bunch of crap at each other and then just shoot holes in it, right? And it's the classic there's no bad ideas in brainstorming type of thing, right? It's when you should be doing like blue ocean thinking, like what if we did robot squirrels versus mecha Godzilla? You know, like I don't know, sure, why not, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then your response would be, well, there's not really any minis to be robot squirrels. And like, how are people going to get it? And you got to
Mhm.
think about model availability and what are the mechanics of that going to be? And is it in a genre people are actually going to find appealing in any way? And, you know, stuff like that. Right.
And if you're gonna do miniature agnostic, you always have to think about, well, can anyone find a model to be this thing in your game? When you're like, "Oh, I've got sculptors on lock and it's all fine and I've got a team of people," then you can
Right.
make your robot squirrel game, knock yourself out. But most of us don't have that access. So in general, you're gonna like think about it and go, "This would be awesome. Wait, does anyone actually make that model?" And then that's kind of a thing to think about.
At some point in our future, Adam, when we become wildly successful, which I'm sure
Mm.
will happen any day now, um, all we got to do to complete the triumvirate here is like find somebody who's really into like 3D sculpting. It's just
Sure,
like
that's true. Yeah,
just
yeah.
bring it all together.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with a 3D sculptor on Death Wizards, Matty
Yeah.
Knuckles over at Knucklebones. That worked out really well, but it's not like the entire game. Like you could get like
Yeah, he did like
you
the
could get
necromancers,
a
yeah.
necromancer,
Because
and it was
obviously
cool.
getting
Yeah,
skeletons and stuff wasn't
skeletons,
hard.
ghosts, zombies. That's everywhere. That's part of why Death Wizards is what it is because the model pool was incredibly simple. Same thing with
Right.
like Space Station Zero. Like you need sci-fi stuff. The end. They could be anything. So
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Everything from Space Marines to Space Pirates, and you're good to go.
Hmm.
My vintage 1986 action figure line from Ice Pirates, just drop them right into the game. So yeah, ideation and brainstorming is step one, and really what that is just like it could be anything from sometimes you've pitched mechanical ideas, right? So like a game that does this, like this is the central focus, right? Of like this kind of mechanic, and sometimes we've pitched ideas that are theme and setting based like, what if it was this theme and here's the setting, right? That kind of thing.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's as simple as a word, but you just kind of talk it back and forth until you, and the key is to think through are the minis going to exist? Can this be a full game? Is it like a rich enough concept, right, to actually do a full game of? Because some things are. Some things are obviously mini games. Some things are more easily are larger games, right? Um, some ideas just don't have the juice to be like a 70 to 100 page standalone book.
If you're like the way we do it is we put out generally two things a year. We have a book that's, again, 70 to 100 pages or whatever. And then we also have the zine, Snarl. So those are our two kind of like holes that we can fit stuff in. And that's the way we've kind of done it. If you are starting out, obviously you can decide to do like a free game that you give away on, itch.io. You could decide to do some book that you get printed overseas with a cool foil color like cover. I mean, like you have all these different options,
Right.
but once you've given yourself some, let's say, limitations, at that point things start to fit into particular molds a little bit easier. And then you're not necessarily going, well, this book is going to be 700 pages and it's going to be, 2 foot by 3 foot. Like nobody wants that book, right? But
Yeah.
you can definitely go, well, this is what I can have access to, and then that kind of can help to spur you on.
That's right. So the key is you find your idea, right? And kind of where you're at. And let's say let's take it to the next step, right? So the next thing you're going to do is what I call the dialing it in phase. Okay. So when Adam and I find an idea that we like, or like we think we like, let me start there. Okay. Then the next thing we do is the dialogue, the dialing, the discussion, your 3Ds. And that is when we kind of pitch back and forth how we think this thing should work, right? Because there's a big difference between the, loose idea that we're talking about in brainstorming and then actually laying down some potential boundaries. Now, we're not to the guiding principles yet. That's because we haven't settled anything yet,
Mhm.
right? So like with Death Wizards, I remember we were talking about some of this like I was like some of the dialing it in was happening. I remember talking to you at Nova one year, right? We were like
Mhm.
walking across the street from a hotel. And I'm like, okay, I want him to fight heroes and this is how it's going to work. And right, blah, 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 blah. Like these kinds of things. Like, you're going to be necromancers. You're going to be, your main missions are going and killing, doing bad guy stuff. And there are going to be heroes who try to stop you, paladins and warriors and wizards and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of sketch out loosely. You're not worried about the mechanics. We're not to the ephemera yet, right? Or anything like that. We're just talking about, like, what does the experience of the game look like, right? It's almost like you're trying to then create the elevator pitch of the game.
Every game can have, like, sure, there's a story, like, oh, what's 40K about? Oh, well, it's about, the emperor, and then he did a thing. And that's not what we're talking about. In general, we're like, you have forces that are in armies, that are in squads, and they fight other things, and they do this, and there's objectives, and you roll a lot of dice. And then there's other games that are very different than that. And it's about like the play loop and what's going on. And it's more the feeling. And again, it doesn't have to do with story, but it's more about, like, a lot of these games that we've done so far have all been on 22 by 30s, which is basically the kill team / war cry size board.
Yep.
If you're like, no, our game's a 4 by 8, like, okay, that's part of your vibe, and you're going to have to keep track of that and understand it. But, it's not about, well, the story is this. It's more about, this is the type of gameplay feel you're going to get from it. And that's really what you're starting to think about before you go even on beyond that.
Yeah, and it can be, like, loosely informed by the story, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
You can have, like, the general theming and stuff. This is also where you tend to get some of that, but that's going to come largely later. You're going to get basic theme now, and then you're going to tighten it up later on, right? Like, you're like, okay, it's a cozy forest game, and you're playing forest creatures collecting, food for the long winter that's coming, right? So it's a turn-based game, and you have to collect enough food before the end of the game, and the end of the game is winter coming. And so the main experience is your little forest creatures moving around and trying to avoid the AI predators and hide away their food or something like that. Okay, sure, that's the game. That's not in any way a thing we're working on.
No.
But, like, you could imagine that being a game, right? Like, I have described something that is a game.
Sure. I mean, I would first ask, well, can the creatures fight each other as well as avoiding,
Right.
or is it just more of a, I'll push you down and then the bear will eat you kind of situation? And again, that's the ideation. That's the kind of brainstorming and ideation and dialing it in and all that kind of stuff that you try to figure out before you start trying to write rules for it. If you start with rules, it's really hard, I think.
Yeah, never
because
start with the
It's in
rules.
a vacuum at that point.
That's right. So there's this old theory of game design called the big game theory, and ephemera, which is effectively the rules. Okay, like, ephemera is the rules, and it's the last step. If you look at the big game theory, it's like this series of arrows laid on top of each other, right? And the last thing you do is get to the rules, because they have to be guided by so much else that you decided earlier,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, yeah, this is where we say, like, exactly what you just did. Well, do they fight each other? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I hadn't thought about the little forest creatures fighting each
Mm-hmm.
other,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, okay, now I need to consider, well, what's within the theme of the game? All right, let's think about that. Let's put it, you can always say, like, let's put a maybe on that, because after you've talked through and sort of dialed it in and discussed and dialogued and stuff like that, that's when you then come to, in my estimation, the most critically important first step you're going to do toward actually making the game. Okay. Because all the rest of this could be just like some loose notes you put somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could be on a piece of paper or in your phone or whatever. But this next step, you're going to open a document that you're going to write this game in, right? That's what we do. And at the top of that document is going to be guiding principles, right?
The guiding principles help you to not suffer from feature creep. That's a huge thing.
That's right.
But they're also your goalpost, not your goalpost, your fence post. I don't know,
Guardrails.
whatever, guardrails,
Yeah.
whatever. There's what keeps you on track. You have
They're
to
little bumpers in the bowling alley when little kids
Mhm.
bowl.
You have to know what it is you are trying to do, and you do it in as few words as possible, so that when a person goes, yeah, but what about spaceships? And you're like, well, we're not making a spaceship game. You'll notice here in the guiding principles, there's no spaceships. So therefore, hence, you know what I mean?
That's right.
And it's a thing you see in software too, is like that, having that, like, minimum viable product. You can't, if you don't ever say, this is what we're doing and this is the jumping off point, you'll never actually ship. And it's the same thing with these types of games.
That's right. The guiding principles are usually I 4 or 5 bullet points It could be a word, right? So like skirmish, that's a
Yeah.
word, like
Yeah.
skirmish game. Okay. So, okay, great. Or it could be like a simple sentence, like dark, moody, gritty. You could have like those three words,
Mhm.
right? And like, so that sort of expresses your atmosphere, right? So when it comes time to put things in, if you're going to put in like really, you're not going to make, if it's like dark and gritty and stuff like that, you're not going to make the characters, the main models, super tough and, immortal and stuff like that, right? You're not going to put Superman into the dark gritty game. Yeah. That's
Right.
Batman.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So again, those guiding principles, it can be as simple as like a sentence, a few words, a word, whatever, but they set up the guardrails for all your next work. Like to look back at our previous ones, like, Death Wizard's guiding principles were like necromantic skirmish combat, dark wizard powers, bad guys assaulting, uh, bad guys
Basically
assaulting the land,
heroes. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Bad guys assaulting the land, defended by heroes, stuff like that, right?
Like I know in the original Rain and Hell, it was like uh it was fast, brutal, demonic skirmish combat.
That's right.
So,
And that
if
ended up going all the way through to the marketing, right?
oh,
Like a lot of times this
absolutely.
stuff will inform the later marketing.
Absolutely. But then during the time that things were coming up and we were brainstorming and working on things and or even into the rules, the reason that the game was all hand to hand was because of the word brutal.
That's right.
Like, shooting a guy is like, yeah, when you get hit, it's brutal. But to the guy who's doing the shooting, he's just pulling a trigger. It's nothing.
Yeah, it was
You know
too
what I mean?
safe, right? We
Yeah,
wanted it to all be
exactly.
melee because it needed to have that up close, the demon on demon
Mhm.
feel, right? That's what made it brutal,
Yeah, yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
Harkonnens.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that like, and I think people probably, if you haven't designed a game, you don't understand why this is so important. But I think your first statement of it stops feature creep really
Mhm.
can't be understated.
Yeah.
You will just, especially when you're first writing games, just be like, well, and also let's do this, and also let's do this, and also let's do
Mhm.
this. Cause you'll just start throwing in every idea you've ever had. And your guiding principles need to be there to tell you, like, no, 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 no. This is a simple, fast, brutal skirmish game. We're not building a whole base building mechanic into it.
I
Right.
honestly believe that this is a part of the reason why we've shipped as many games as we have since 2021.
Right.
And it's like I will see people who are talking about like, oh, I've got this idea for I've been working on this game design. I've been working on it for 7 years or something like that. And obviously, there's times when you just don't, life gets in the way and you don't work on it and stuff like that. We've made it kind of a focus. You and I have made this company a bit of a focus in our lives, and that's cool. But it's also the fact that we're cutting it off real early. We're not going, yeah, but what about this? Well, what if we added in these guys? Well, what if we did that? We're starting off and going, this is the project, and there we go. And it's partially, I think, because we're not doing an ecosystem type game. We're doing a game
Sure.
that is like, there's this game, it's fun, you play it for a while, and then you don't, and then maybe you come back to it later, and it's not like supposed to take over your life and your personality, right? Like,
Yeah, this
and
is not your new lifestyle. That's right. It's meant
exactly,
to be a
exactly.
fun game, like games.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of that, having it nailed down in the beginning so that we're all on the same page and everything, that we do informs on those initial guiding principles, that's really like, yeah, that's the thing that keeps you on track.
That's right. Once we're through that, we both, and by the way, these are all, I should state that for Adam and I, these are all discussion points.
Mhm.
Like, even if I'm not saying it, understand that we come to a collective consensus on this. Like, neither one of us has like diktat power when it comes to this stuff.
Mhm.
We do a write up, and then, Adam and I meet every week and go through basically all the progress, right? If you've ever been in a stand up in your life for a sprint, that's a lot what it's like. Like, I'll present to him, this is what I'm working on. He presents to me, this is what he was working on. And then
Mhm.
we talk about future plans. So what we did, what we're doing, what we're going to do,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So we're always on the same page with each other. And it turns out in a company of two people, it's pretty easy to keep everybody in the loop. Not a lot of
True.
CCs on those emails, which I appreciate.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Uh,
true.
okay. So that then brings us to another important early step, which is what I call like art and theme planning. Does not mean we go out and hire the artists yet. It means we think about what do we want the general theme, the vibe, the look to be. So we have discussions around this time, right? Of
Mhm.
like, well, what's this feel like? What do we get? What's the type of stuff we're going to need? So, for example, with Majestic 13, this is when we started thinking about like, oh, well, what we want is a lot of like files and redacted looking documents and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so, the theme is going to be like 1950s military leaked documents or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Was
like
how I'd sort of sum it
total
up.
X-Files type stuff, like
Yeah.
if you've ever watched the X-Files, the lone gunman, there were these like conspiracy theorist guys, if they had a folder in their desk and you open it up, it would look like this. It would be a bunch of pictures with top secret stamps on them that they found that they got from somebody or out of the garbage. There'd be a bunch of redacted documents and everything like that. And because of all of that, Majestic 13 didn't have an illustrator. We didn't even like I did all the artwork because it
That's right.
was all just Photoshop manipulation and stuff like that and stock photos and then making them look like a photo sitting on a page and all that stuff. And you can do that. You don't necessarily, if you've got somebody, if your layout person is talented enough depending on the game, like obviously if it's a game about, I don't know, like wizards and stuff like that, then you would either need your person to just have like snippets from like wizard spell books or wizards books about learning
Oh,
about how to
sure.
be with, you could do that. But still there's other times when you're like, okay, well, this is going to have to be, we're going to have to get an illustrator who can draw X, Y, Z, whatever it is. But knowing that before you actually start heading down that road and kind of dialing in what you want it to look like, I mean, we took some design cues as far as page layout from Mordheim. I definitely like looked at fonts at Mordheim and like some things like that.
Oh, yeah,
We
sure.
we
So, like,
ended
when
up
we were
not
thinking about
using
Death
them.
Wizards, we looked at, like, 18th century woodcuts
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and, stuff like that, right? Like, we knew we wanted this, like, heavy, inky, dark, liney feel, right? Because the world needed to feel, like, lived in, gritty, a little dirty, that kind of thing,
And if
right?
you look at Mordheim is very pen and ink and a lot of scratchy kind of illustrations and stuff like that. And that's what kind of Sam ended up doing, like in the little smaller interstitial kind of illustrations. But the stuff that Martin did was predominantly more like almost like black and white watercolor, which gave it a very different kind of painterly look. And that was also again, it was a situation where I saw some of Martin's art someplace, and I was like, and I literally just cashed it away in my head because I'm like, at some point I want to use this artist if we can. And then when we started talking about Death Wizards, I'm like, I think this guy's the guy we can talk to about it. And then he was on board, and then you go from there. Um, it's important to try to figure out like what the theme is going to look like, if it's real dark, if it's sci-fi, if it's, all these different things, because they not only kind of support who you're going to look for artists, but also what you're thinking about for layout, what you're thinking about for the logo, like what you're thinking, like all that kind of stuff. You want that stuff
Absolutely.
to be cohesive.
Yes, you want the rules to mesh with the general theming and the art. It should all feel of a kind,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Like, it's
Yeah.
very difficult to have like a spooky kind of like fantasy game, and then your font is basically you're using like, I don't know, some sort of sans serif font like Futura from the 50s, on a page
Right.
with like very little illustration and just like
And, like,
it,
all the illustrations themselves are, like, bright and clean and stuff
right,
like
yeah,
that, right?
yeah,
Like, yeah, yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Like, you wouldn't hire Larry, like, not that we're gonna hire him anyways, he's obviously way out of our league, but, like, you wouldn't hire Larry Elmore to do that book, just as an example, right? But if you were gonna write, like, a bold fantasy story about knights
Oh,
and stuff
sure.
like that, then,
Yeah,
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 he's your
yeah.
guy. That kinda thing, drawing that kinda inspiration,
And when
right?
we get to artists, I'm going to talk about kind of like why you don't hire an artist to do a thing that artist doesn't do. You know what I mean? Like
That's
that's
right.
that's
Oh,
that's an
yes.
important thing too. Yeah.
Yes. So this is like your theming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then once you've got that kind of nailed down, you've got your guiding principles that are sending you in the right direction and not allowing you to stray too much. And you are at this point, whether you're working by yourself or whether you're working with a partner or a trio or whatever, as long as everybody's on the same page for this is the type of thing we want it to look like, even if it's just really like simple. If you want to make a mood board, make a mood board. You know what I mean? Go down and be
100%.
like,
Oh, yeah.
you just shoot a bunch of pictures with your phone of like games that you think are cool and page layouts that you think are neat and maybe a font that you like, or collect that stuff. And if you're not doing the layout yourself, if you're paying someone to do the layout or whatever, that if you can give them a whole bunch of like, again, kind of guardrails and go, this is what we're looking for. Like, I've worked it with clients for long enough in a graphic design field that I know that most clients love to have you make a thing so that they can tell you, well, that's not what I want. They can't tell you what they want.
Yep.
They cannot start by going, this is what I want. 9 out of 10 will just be like, you're the guy, you figure it out. And then you go, well, this. And then they go, well, not that. and now they can tell you what they want. So
Right.
if you want to just skip that, try to figure out ahead of time what it is you want before you start going to the layout person or whatever.
That's right. Then we get into a very important part, which I will call the basic write up and primary loop planning. Okay. So this is where you then get in and you do like a basic write up of the core mechanic of the game. So here I have to explain what a primary loop is. The primary loop of your game is whatever the thing is that your players will be doing the most often. So, for example, in Warhammer 40K or Age of Sigmar, that would be like rolling the hit, wound, and save, right? So, that is the thing you are doing to interact the most. It is the most common role in the game. It is what happens constantly, right? A unit hits another unit. They make some attacks. Those have hit rolls, wound rolls, save rolls, damage occurs, primary loop.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you look at how it's laid out in the book visually, they lay it out as a little loop, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You start off with like initiative, and then once there's initiative, then you go, okay, movement happens, and then after movement, then this happens, and this is how attack happens. And it is basically the turn. The play loop is kind of the turn for some
That's right.
degree.
And you want to just kind of sketch that out loosely. Try to put some sample mechanics on it, see how it feels, right? So here's a fun story. When I did this for Death Wizards, I had the whole idea down of like where I wanted the numbers for like the Necromancer and the minions. And originally my idea for the heroes was that the heroes would have a variable stat spread. Okay. What I mean by a variable stat spread is, they would have you would roll a die at the beginning of the game, and that would set what the their numbers were. You'd roll a D10 or a D12 or something. And when I tested that very quickly, I immediately figured out that didn't work. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. With this little primary loop thing, this basic write up, you can actually do a simple little alpha test. You can like run it, just run the primary loop. Does it work? Is it functional? Is it interesting for you to then modify with the rest of the game rules? Right? In general, you want the primary loop to be as simple and memorable as possible so that you can lay a bunch of other rules on top of it that create exceptions to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like, it's again, just to go back, because it's very simple. If you think of like AOS or 40K, you have some number to hit, some number to wound, whatever, right? There's lots of things that modify that. Or when you hit and roll a 6, or when you hit, you can reroll, or in this case, it gains this extra bonus, right? And so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. Infinite variation on a simple concept, right?
Exactly.
So that's basically what you want to focus on there. If your primary loop is overtly complicated, if it's asking too much, if there's too many choice points in the primary loop, your game's going to get overly complicated when you try to lay more scaffolding on top of it, right?
Mm-hmm. I've found over the years when I want to try out a new game, I don't sit down and play the entire game. I start by myself setting up 2 models and go, okay, like how does this work? Okay, well, we roll for initiative. Okay, great. Okay, movement. Yeah, okay. And then this happens. This guy wants to shoot that guy. How do I do that? And I look at the rules and I go, okay, well, I roll 3d6 and then I have to do this. And then this happens. And then this guy maybe gets a dodge. And then but for me, I'm doing it more often than not. If I'm just trying to see, is this more complicated and weird than I like, or is it fine? Other times it's like, if I can at least get this play loop in my head, now when I go back and read the rules again, things just make more sense. It's that same situation of being like, oh, I don't understand it until I try to stumble through it, and then going back and reading it, I understand it better. It's the same type of thing. And you're trying to do it by like laying the track down in front of you as you're on the train, you know what I mean?
Right.
To make the game as you're doing it. So you can always come back though. That's the benefit, is you can always be like, well, that didn't, I'm not sure. And then try something else. But it's about vibes. It's about feel,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like I think of like the Trench Crusade primary loop, which is basically just like, 2d6, get a 7 up, right? It's sort of the thing there. It's a brilliant primary loop, right? And then you can do like the plus and minus dice thing and all that, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, that's great. Like keeping it nice and tight, and like you can test it. Don't just write it, test it, roll it, put something on the table. Exactly what you just said. Like, what Adam you just said. Like you had two models, you set it down, you go, okay, rolls this dice, rolls this dice. Does that work? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you're having trouble, or it seems like it's hard to explain, or it seems complicated, and you're only in the primary loop stage, then like if this early thing, you got to go back to the drawing board or make
Yeah,
some
yeah. You got to
modifications.
start over.
Okay. So once that's done and you get yourself in a good place, I now bring this stuff to Adam. Like when we work on him, I kind of take him through it. And Adam's really good when I bring him stuff of going like, well, but what about this? But what about this? But what about
Mhm.
this? Like Adam, you have a unique talent for being able to spot problems, like of saying of seeing what's not there. And this is actually really valuable. One of the like I value a lot of things in our partnership, but one of the things that you're really good at is seeing what's not there, what I didn't write, and then asking me questions about it. Like, well, what if this thing happens? What if this thing happens? Right? That kind of thing.
I think it's because I have a very I have this skill where I can be a dumb guy. And it's that, I mean, literally, like it's just a skill where you could just be like, well, that didn't make sense. And it didn't make sense to me. So then I go, well, why is it like this? And then you're like, hmm. And so I get to be the dumb guy who comes back and says, but why? And then that can help to maybe spur some changes so that when other people come across it who don't have the benefit of having, Vince explain it to them, they have to read it. Like it's real hard. Like I mentioned before, I will read a new rule set and try it sort of, and then go back and read it again, and it makes more sense. But that first time, you don't pick up jack. It seems like, or at least I don't. So in this situation, when you explain things to me, I can come back and go, yeah, but why? And then that can spur some changes sometimes.
Exactly. We catch those things early. So once we've sort of settled on that alignment, then the next step is to create a basic outline. So I basically go into a document and I outline out sort of all the elements I think I'm going to need for the game. So this is everything from like, this is where story bits are going to go, and this is a rules section, and this is how combat's going to work. And I'm just literally writing like section headers, right? This is where I'm going to stuff things into. And I just think through logically what all the stuff is we're going to need.
If you're working with somebody, also, I can't stress enough how much it's like really useful to have some sort of like web/cloud based document thing,
Right.
like
That you can
Google
both be easily in.
Drive or something by somebody that, yeah, that you can both be in, and that it's constantly updated and it's on the cloud. If you have like, well, I've got a Word document on my laptop and then you've got this thing, but I didn't bring my laptop and you've got your thing and I don't, you want to have it something where it's always not only in one place and it's always the most recent version, but you can also go back and see the versioning history and stuff like that. And it's just really useful. I mean, like Google Drive is a good one and it's free, but there's other options out there depending on what you're into.
That's right. And the outline is just keep in mind, you're not going to make a perfect outline. You will figure out sections you missed, extra things you want to put in later. Like it'll just happen. You'll get writing and realize, oh crap, we need this extra section on healing. I didn't realize healing was going to be a part of this game, but there's a whole big, but as I got into writing more of the rules, I added a lot of things that I, wrote in, like you heal this much life when you use this ability. And it's like, well, what the heck does that mean? How does healing work? Right. So, okay, I need to have a healing section that like broadly explains what the heck I'm talking about when I say you heal a D6 damage.
There have been several times when cover has come up in the game, but yet we've not written any rules for cover. Like,
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that. And then you're like, and that's the thing where I look at it and I go, but what does cover do? And you're like, oh yeah, we got it. And it's, again, it's a forest for the trees. You're too close to it sometimes, where you're
Yep.
like, well, obviously cover is going to be like, I don't know, some sort of negative, I guess, probably for hitting. And then you're like, yeah, but what is it? Well, yeah, well, let's write that down. So that's important
Uh,
too.
as a side note, cover is the bane of my entire existence. I just
Yeah,
want to
you
state
do
this
not
right
like it.
now.
You do not
I
like it at
hate it.
all.
I hate
Yeah, yeah.
cover. I hate having to create line of sight rules and cover rules and all of that. I truly, truly despise it. It makes me want to make every game we ever do just melee only, so that we don't have to worry about it. Okay, so we're going. It's pure like caveman games from here out, Adam.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
all we're
Yeah.
doing. Just like look
Bonk.
before the invention of any kind of throwy weapon,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
clubs and heavy sticks and rocks only.
Yes, but not throwing rocks.
No, no, no,
No,
no.
no,
You would
just
never
yeah.
throw a rock,
No,
obviously.
no,
It'd be wasting a
absolutely.
good rock.
That's
You hit
true.
people with rock.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you begin the long process of filling it out, right? Which at this point, you should have a pretty straight road to do so. if you have your guiding principles, if you have your theming, if you have your primary loop planned, then you just need to now create the ephemera. Now is where you're going to go in and actually write all of the rules. This is the list of weapons, and this is the list of different kinds of,
Armor.
cloaks you can wear and armors
Mhm.
you can buy. And this is the missions you go on or whatever, right? Whatever. All that crap, right? That's where you put all that crap in. Okay. And you start filling it out. This is the bulk of your time because it takes time to write all this junk,
And to
right?
make it clear and to make it, yeah, exactly. Like your notes make sense to you, but they're not going to make sense to anybody else.
That's right. As a side note, when you fill it out, as part of your outline, one of the things I would recommend that you do that we don't always do, but you can be better than us. We should do this more. Um, but like I will openly admit, it has not always found its way into our process.
Mhm.
Is a style guide, right? Like what words
Oh.
are going to be capitalized or
Mhm.
bolded or underlined or something like that. Like what are game terms that you should that what's the official name for a round or a turn or a
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like lock in your key terms as early as you can so that and like make yourself a little simple cheat sheet style guide. That way
Yeah.
you write consistently throughout the
This is
document.
definitely the editor's lament, is what it is, because
Yeah,
sure, like I mean, honestly, the software is going to figure out most of the spelling errors. That's not what the editors do these
sure.
days. Instead, they're like, so is armor capitalized or not? So is demon capitalized or not? So is robot capitalized? It's just that over and over, into the horizon. So if you plan ahead, and again, you're right, we don't do that as well as we should. Then it's very simple for them to go, oh well, yeah, if it's one of the stats for these creatures, and then you use it in a sentence, it should be capitalized because it's life or it's move or whatever. Now there are times when you say you then move this dice over there. That time it's not going to be capitalized because it's not referring to the move stat. It's referring to just the word. And so it's again, that's one of those things that you do want to keep an eye on because people can be very easily confused by
Yeah,
a word being not capitalized, and then I'm like, are you talking about moving something or the move stat? And that's just, I mean, look at other games, look at the way other games do it, and go, oh, okay, I should probably try to do it this way. Especially if you're
yep.
like a big company that seems to have a big staff of people, you can always steal from them in that you look at it and go, oh, I should try to maybe make things formatted well. Maybe I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that does lead us into editing for sure. In that, you can't be the final person.
That's right. Yes, I should state when I'm filling it out, the outline, like when I'm actually writing everything in, Adam and I, like I said, are getting together every week and I'm reviewing, like, okay, this is what I wrote. And we're literally reading through what I wrote together to make sure that nothing's missed or it's clear enough or stuff like that. And this is again where Adam will catch me and be like, yes, but you forgot what if this situation happens or
Mhm.
whatever. So, and yes, that takes us directly into honestly quite a few parallel processes. So like up till this point, you can some of this can be in parallel, but it's often a little single threaded, at least for us, right?
Yeah.
Now we get into a lot of parallel processes, which is like the editing, the hiring of artists, right? Initial layout planning, stuff like that. So yeah, why don't you talk about editing?
Yeah. Honestly, by the time that we get to art and theme planning, after the guiding principles, I'm already starting to try to find somebody to be an artist. So
Right.
if you wait until you are editing the book and then start looking for an artist, you're
It's
going to
too
have a
late.
bad time. Yeah. Because artists, as it turns out, need time to do things. And so if you're trying to hit some sort of schedule, which we generally are, you want to be ahead of it. So as far as editing is concerned, we have an editor that we work with, and we also my wife is second editor basically.
Yep.
She's got an English degree and she's very good at catching stuff as well. But there have been times that it's gone through Vince, it's gone through me, it's gone through editor number one, editor number two, it's gone through Tom even.
Yep.
And then it gets out there and you're like, nope, this is that we totally forgot this, whatever it could be, sometimes it's just a word. Sometimes,
That word was wrong. It was a copy paste error. That's the most common thing is it'll still
yeah.
sneak through. A single word copy paste error is the most common thing that sneaks through everybody's reading.
The other thing that I find that sneaks through a bunch too is charts. Like in
Yep.
the because like if you make a chart of things and if you forget to then put a thing in there, it's not wrong. It's just invisible because it never got put in there.
Yeah, the
And
editor doesn't know that you're supposed to be 14 options in that chart, not 13.
right. Whereas and that's happened a bunch of times before. And sometimes that's a thing that happened initially, like during the document stage. And then there's other times where in going from the document stage to the layout stage, maybe there was a page break in there or something. And all of a sudden you're like, but we had a missing creature in Death Wizards, didn't we? The first time we
That's
printed
right.
it.
Yeah, in Death Wizards, that's right. We had on the like main monster chart, one of the monsters was missing. Now it was in the book. It was there. All the rules were there, but on like the
Mhm.
summary chart, one was missing. Yes.
But that's why we didn't have the book in time for TMX, is because we caught it and then didn't we reprint it?
We reprinted it, yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it was before launch. Yeah, we caught it
yeah.
before. Yeah.
So the company that we work with on that, you have to get, because it's print on demand, they still have to print a proof and send it to you, and you have to okay it before they start allowing people to buy it. Whereas if you go straight to PDF and don't have a printed version, there's no proof involved because it's a PDF. And if you decide, oh geez, I forgot this, and change it, then everybody who bought the PDF gets an email saying, hey, there's a new version, go download it. And so that's nice too. But um, basically the editing is important, and you might think it's not as important, but it's incredibly important
Yeah, and
because
you cannot edit your own stuff.
yeah, no,
Just
for sure.
period.
Because you will just, again, it's the forest for trees. You'll see it and you'll look over it and you'll look over it and you'll look over it, and someone else will look over your shoulder and go, there's a word missing there. And you're like, no,
Right.
there's not. And then you'll read it. Like, I don't know how many like memes I've seen where they're like, you see like a thing and you read it in your head, and then at the bottom it's like, go back and read that again. And you look at it and you're like, God, all the letters are screwed up or whatever. And
Yep.
your brain just went over it. It's the same type of deal. As far as artists are concerned, I mentioned before, don't ever hire an artist to do a thing that artist doesn't do.
Yes.
Um, it's gonna give you a bad time. It is best to find somebody. If you are making a game about cool skeletons and undead, then it is super important to try to find somebody whose Instagram or their Twitter or their Blue Sky or their whatever, your portfolio website has got a bunch of skeletons in it or something like that. If all they ever draw is mechs, don't go, yeah, but can you do ghosts? Like, just find a person who draws ghosts. It's just it just works better overall to get people who like a thing, or who you like the thing that they do, and then get them to do it for you. Now, I have a tendency to, like I said, spook around quite a bit on Twitter. Well, not too much Twitter anymore. I used to do Twitter, but I don't really do that anymore. But Blue Sky, Instagram, ArtStation. I think it's artstation.com. That's also a website to go look at different artists who put their stuff up there and everything like that. Um, Sometimes it's finding people, like I found a couple different artists through Twitch. Most recently was Stephanie, Falling
Yeah.
Freely on Twitch. Like, I was watching her paint miniatures on and off, and I've seen her at different conventions locally because she's like same state as I am. And so I was watching her on Twitch one day, and she was drawing two kobolds sitting around like a fire, like a little campfire, and this goblin was sneaking up on them. And I was just like, oh, that's who we need for the Great Goblin Argle Bargle, which didn't even have a name yet. I think it was the Great Goblin Gamut was what we were talking
Gamma,
about
yeah,
initially.
first, yeah, because I like alliteration, folks. Let me
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
you
yeah.
what, right now.
So finding artists and working with them in that way and giving them way more time than you think that is necessary. That's also important, because very frequently, not always, but very frequently, there will be slippage as far as like scheduling and things like that. The artist that we worked with on the inside of Rain and Iron was Brendan, sorry, was super good, like, as far as like boom, done fast. Like, it was great. But not every artist is like that. So
Yeah,
it's
note to artists, if you want more work, just ship your stuff on time. Like, I
yeah,
know. I
yeah,
know it's hard,
it
okay?
is. It is.
But like, as somebody who's also engaging in the creative process of, painting miniatures on deadlines for videos and writing things on deadline for books, I get
Mhm.
it. Deadlines are hard. The more you stick to them, the more we will want to, and other people will want to hire you again for a job.
It's
When you
true.
keep delaying deadlines, I never want to hire you again because you are terrible
Exactly.
to work with.
Yeah, yeah. It's rough, but that's an important thing to take a look at. I would tell you just straight up to stay away from AI, like generative AI,
Oh
for
God,
your
yes, yeah.
artwork.
Stay away from that. That's poison.
Yeah.
That's
It's
just
not only
toxic.
is it
That's just theft.
Yeah, well, it's theft. It's also very frequently ugly. It's also someone's going to figure it out and then get real mad about it online. And these are all things you could just, completely bypass by not doing it. So it seems, and I've had people. I had a guy send me a book a while back that like literally just said on it, "Oh yeah, the art's all AI," and I was just like, "Well, I can tell first of
Oh,
all," and then
gross.
I just like it. It just yeah. So I wouldn't go down that road. I actually had somebody on. We were talking a little bit about game design a little bit on my Twitch stream most recently, and someone was like, "Well, what if it's just for like placeholders, like for like the Kickstarter, if you're going to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I still think you're going to get
I
more
wouldn't. I think
blow."
it's still toxic. I really do.
Well, it
Stay
is.
away from it.
You're just going to get
Like
more blowback from
the
people who are
only
looking for that
excuse
type of
I
thing.
could see using it, okay, at all. I
Hmm.
really do believe AI art is theft, top to bottom.
Hmm.
If you're
Same
bad
here.
at like art direction and have no idea, I could see you using it for a vision board for a real artist you are going to pay, where you go and tell the machine this kind of like you give it a couple of prompts to give it general ideas, and then you send that to the artist and say, like, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That would
Yeah,
be where
maybe.
like that is never meant to be published or used in any way. It's you're giving it to a real artist, paying them for their good work, and
Hmm.
what you're doing is just using it. You, as a non artist, are using it and saying, Here's like my best take on the kind of thing I'm looking for. Now, please iterate and create." Right?
What we
That would be
generally
the only
do.
way I could ever see using it.
Yeah, no, and what we generally do, what I generally do is we will sit down and we will write like a paragraph. So
Yes,
if we're going to talk to an artist and we need, I don't know, let's say we need 20 illustrations, we're going to basically send them 20 paragraphs. And then
that's right.
maybe also every once in a while I'll also send along some like fancy stick figure sketches. Like I have a background in art to some degree. I can't draw well enough to do two illustrations in books at this point, but I can at least show you, yeah, if this guy was here and this guy was here and then that guy, that kind of stuff. I can give you some thumbnail, generally kind of like sketchy ideas so
Yeah,
that
you've done
you
like
know
some
what we're
sketchy
talking.
stuff before just to get like the fit where the figures should be placed in a scene and stuff like that. Anybody can do that. You can use little stick figures and rocks and
And
stuff.
there's
It's
probably
fine.
even programs where you can like move a bunch of like little like posable, almost like
Maquettes.
drawing maquette guys, like in a piece of software. So you're like, this guy's looking over this guy's shoulder, and this is happening, and that kind of thing. Whatever works best for you, and also understand that sometimes your illustrators are going to need to go back and forth and send you a thumbnail of just a very quickie, squeaky sketch, and go, "Is this what you're looking for?" And you're like, "Yeah, but this guy should be hanging off the ceiling or whatever," and then you can kind of go from there. We've had artists that have needed a bunch of direction and has been fine. And then we've had artists that we've given them literally a bunch of text and just had a conversation with them. And I mean, and then they just hear like they're like, "Here you go," and you're like, "Oh wow, you nailed it first try, no
Yeah,
notes,
perfect try. First
perfect."
out of the
Yeah,
gate. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and also don't. Personally think it's not important. It's not a good idea to be a micromanager and go, "Well, but can you make the pouch a little bit more pouchy?" Like just,
Right.
again, this is part of, again, hiring an artist who does the thing that you want them to do, as opposed to trying to be real micromanaging and say, "I love the way that you draw stuff. Okay, now do something you don't ever do, and then I'm going to complain about every piece of it." It
Yeah,
just
let
doesn't
their
work.
voice come through, right? Like
Exactly.
accept that they're putting down their own creative vision, and it'll be a little bit different than what's in your head.
If you don't like their voice for this project, then don't hire them for this project. It's real simple.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah. And then as far as getting into layout and things like that.
Real quick, let me just hit
Oh
people
yeah,
with
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Here's let me give you an example. I want to make this real concrete for people. Here's a piece of art direction. Think of the if you own Death Wizards, think of the image, one of my favorite images in the book, which is the giant skeleton attacking the town, right? So he would be the art direction for that. Center frame, like you'd say lower third or something like that. So third size of a page because you're just generally intoning size.
Hmm.
And you would say um, giant skeleton, center frame, probably 30 to 40 feet tall, towering over several small village huts, simple farmhouses, swinging a giant sword through the house ground at any people in the
Hmm.
way. Villagers are scattering in fear away from the skeleton towards the
Camera,
point of view,
the
towards the
viewer. Yeah.
camera.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
towards the viewer.
I think we
There is
said,
that is a piece of art direction right there.
yeah, and I think we said something along the lines too for that particular illustration. We were like, those skeletons that they sell at the Home Depot, right? Like the ones for Halloween that are super tall, like twice as tall as that, but then just give them a sword and have them, chasing people. And it came out looking great. So Yeah, it doesn't have to be a ton of stuff, but if you can't see it in your head a little bit, that makes it more difficult. So take the time to like write it, and even if you maybe you can't draw, but if you can kind of sketch it a little bit so that they can look at it and go, okay. And also understanding that it's a good idea to try to design things for the page. Like a lot of the illustration in Death Wizards was either designed to be like lower half of the page or kind of over to the side because of the way that we do
Right.
layout. um, we do layout, and I had a conversation with a person at TMX about this, was asking about it because he was like, most books are generally 2-column layout that I see in the industry, and you guys do this one bigger column and one narrow column out towards the edge of the page. And I was like, yeah, we call them sidebars. And he's like, why do you do that? And I was like, well, because it helps with art, because we can do kind of a cooler piece of art and wrap some text around it towards the bottom lower corner of the page. The sidebars allow us to put in notes, kind of, or like, hey, by the way, definitely make sure to pay attention to this. We can throw weird little like story bits in there. We can do all kinds of different things with that. Now we don't do that in Snarl,
Snarl.
because it's a
Yeah.
considerably smaller, it's a 5.5 by 8.5 as opposed to 8.5 by 11 book. We just have a single column, and that's fine. But in the bigger books,
That's
we
right.
do that as opposed to doing a 2-column thing. It gives us a little bit more freedom, and also it gives us some wiggle room. Um, it was Space Station Zero. When we got the first proof back, we realized we'd never told anybody how to make a commander. So
Yeah.
rather than redesign, because here's the deal: if all of a sudden you've done your layout and everything's ready to go, and now you need to put 4 paragraphs or 2 paragraphs even in between 2 sections, everything else in the rest of the book starts to slide. Because when I have to move this down, well, that moves this down on the next page, and the next page, and the next page. So having a little sidebar like that, we just made a sidebar about how to make how to set up your commander or whatever, sent it back for reproofing, got a new copy, boom, done. So having some sort of like runway for mistakes is why we kind of use the sidebar method, and it works out relatively well for us, at
It
least on the
also just lets
side.
you talk directly in
Hmm.
a normal human voice because you're going to write the text in rules text, right?
Yeah,
But in the sidebar, we can come over there and be like, "Hey, look, everybody, here's what we're trying to say,"
yeah.
right? And you just kind of talk in normal language over there, so people can get the gist of it,
I
right?
think that if it fits, it sits thing has been in
Yes,
nearly every one of our games, and that's
because it's
basically
just a
telling
core
you,
principle of how I believe
yeah.
games should be played.
Yeah, if you can't get that thing to sit on top of that model, on top of that piece of terrain, then it can't be there. If it can't balance or whatever, then it just can't be there. And we always want to explain that. And again, all of these games are your games once you start to play them, so you don't have to pay attention to that. But people do like to be told, well, because here's the deal: when you're playing it with somebody else, if someone else is just trying to balance this giant vehicle onto the very tip of this building, you can be like, look, it says right here you can't do that. And
Exactly.
that you've at least got some ammo for telling your friend to stop to being a jerk, which is important. As far
What
as
do you actually use to do the layout, Adam? That's going to be a question people have.
That's a good point. I use Adobe InDesign mainly only because I know it, and because I already pay monthly for the Adobe stuff anyway. If you are starting out and you don't want to pay $50 a month or whatever the heck the Adobe suite is, then I would tell you to look at a program called Affinity Publisher, I believe is the name. Affinity, it's like AFFINITY, Affinity, not Infinity like the game from Spain, but it's Affinity, and they make Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and Affinity Publisher. Photo is basically their version of Photoshop. Designer is their version of excuse me, of Illustrator. That's what I'm trying to come up with. And Publisher is their version of InDesign. And the benefit to using that is that it's inexpensive. It's not a monthly subscription. You pay for it once and you're ready to go. And if you decide to go into working with somebody like, let's say, Wargames Atlantic, Wargames Vault, Wargame Vault, who we're probably about to talk to some degree, or talk about to some degree in this next section, those are the two software things that they support: is the big huge multi-trillion-dollar company, Adobe, and their program InDesign, and then Affinity, which is a far smaller company that charges far less, and their company, they're their program publisher. So they've got knowledge base support documents for both of those pieces of software. If you use something else, you're a little bit more on your own. So, And I think, I don't know, I don't remember the price. Last time I looked at Affinity Publisher, I think it was like $70, so it's not that expensive.
Oh,
But
that's great. Yeah.
that's
Oh,
something to
yeah. So
take a
that
look at.
brings us directly to, so, you're obviously the layout king. And then after that, yeah, it gets to like, let's talk format and actual publishing, right? So you
Yeah.
mentioned War Game Vault.
Mhm.
So how do you have to format these things? And like, how do we publish through War Game Vault, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so with generally what you're going to do, let's say you are make this is the way that we do it. Again, this is the whole point of the episode is how we do it. Because we are making print on demand books through Wargame Vault, which is owned by a bigger company that's basically Drive Through RPG. The overall overarching company is a company called One Bookshelf, which I think is also now partially owned by Roll20. It's a whole thing. But if you are doing a print version through them, you need to go to their knowledge base and you need to download a template from them for the size of the book that you want to produce, because they can produce books of all kinds of different sizes, 5.5 by 8.5, 8.5 by 11, this, that, the other thing, all kinds of different sizes. So you need to go through their knowledge base till you find the thing where it says, these are all the different templates. And then you want to download that template for whichever piece of software you're using, whether it's InDesign or whether it's Affinity Publisher. At that point, it has all kinds of settings and stuff put into it that will help you later on. If you just design it in whatever you design it in and then go, yeah, let's just try to make a print version of that, you're going to have a bad time. It's not going to come out right. If you were just going to do PDF only, then you could literally lay it out in like probably Word or maybe Microsoft Publisher or who knows whatever. But because you're just literally making the PDF and then sending it to them, and then they're selling it to people and everything like that. But with the book, there's a bunch of weird printer kind of sometimes old timey things about dot gain and this and that and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that stuff is pre-programmed into the template that you are downloading from them. So that's kind of important. That being said, they also have templates you can download for PDF as well if you were doing PDF only, but you don't have to. You can get around that one. The thing is, if you're doing a print and PDF, you want to lay it all out in a print template. And then at the end of the whole process and everything, then you also make the PDF version. You don't have to start over. Whereas if you do
Right.
the PDF software template thing first, you kind of can't take it and then put it into the print setup. So,
Yeah. It's a whole, you can go one direction, but not the other.
yeah, exactly. But it is the thing that I've found is that, well, we've both found this. It is far easier to just do PDF only,
That's right.
incredibly easier, because you could literally get done with the design and everything and all that stuff, and you're done. And you made your PDF, and you're like, "This is cool," and then you can upload it, and you can start selling it minutes later. But
Right.
if you want to get it a print version, they require that once you've uploaded it, and then it goes through a bunch of different processes because they have to make sure all the fonts are there and all this stuff and blah blah blah. It's called pre-flight in the printing industry. They have to pre-flight the whole thing, and they're working with another company that does the actual printing, not War Game Vault. They don't do the printing. This other company called Ingram/Lightning Source, something like that. They take care of it, but they have requirements to make it so that it prints properly on their machinery and all that kind of stuff. And they require that you get a proof printed and then mailed to yourself, and then you look at it in the flesh and then go, yep, everything looks cool. And then you sign off on it. And then at that point, you can start selling it.
Right.
Because then when it gets shipped to 50 people or something like that, and those people are like, well, this is all screwed up. You can't go back to them and go, you guys screwed this up because you signed off on the proof.
That's
So
right.
the in the grand scheme of things, it is better, in my opinion, to do PDFs because you can they can be shipped everywhere. There's no tariffs on them. They're instantaneous. There's all kinds of benefits. However, it does seem like gamers seem to prefer print stuff. So we've
Yeah, we
noticed
like physical books here, Adam. That's
I
like,
I
I
yeah,
I know you don't
I
care. You're like
generally
Mr. I everything on an iPad guy.
yeah, I am.
But
I really
I
am.
I love me a physical book. I run out of a physical book. I'm a physical book guy.
And there's a lot of folks like you. And so I see a lot of products that go up onto the War Game Vault website, for example, that are PDF only because it's way easier. But if you spend the time and the extra effort and you do try to make a print book through their system, that'll also help you out a whole bunch because it'll just be people will be like, oh, I can get a physical book. Cool. Now you can also set it up so that the PDF costs X. and the book costs Y, and then the book and the PDF costs X plus Y. Or you can make it where maybe you get a discount on the PDF if you buy it with the book or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Or you can just do what we do and go, if you bought the book, we're going to give you the PDF for free. Because
That's
that
right.
is like a savings that people will look at and go, ooh, I'm getting the PDF for free. I can hardly afford not to, right? But it doesn't impact us particularly in any situation. If I tell you, if you want the PDF and the printed book, you're going to have to spend more than the printed book to do that. There's a lot of people who look at that and go, but why? And that's the way we looked at it. And we're just like,
That's right.
if you bought the printed book, you're going to get the PDF for free. If you want to just have the PDF, it's cheaper than the printed book. We don't mark them the same price. And however you want to do pricing is however you want to do pricing. I don't really have any great plans on that. I know how
Yeah, no,
we've
you're
been
gonna
doing
like
it, but
what I'll say about pricing is this. You're gonna have a minimum cost. Like this is if you're doing the print on demand thing with somebody like Wargame Build or anything similar. All the print on demand publishers are mostly function under the same model because I have worked with some other ones in the past in my previous projects. You have some base cost if you're doing a physical print book, right?
Yep.
And that is usually calculated by the type of book you're doing. So size, and then black and white or color, and then paperweight and
hardcover,
all that kind of
soft,
stuff.
yeah, exactly,
Yep.
yeah.
Hardcover, soft cover. So that's like all of those factor into then like a per page cost, right? So some number of cents per page.
Mhm.
You can then figure out, okay, I've got this many pages and multiply it out. And this is the base cost of my book, right? Sometimes there'll be extra fees on top of there. So do pay attention to that pricing chart. Like sometimes it's not always just a direct calculation, depending on who you're going through. There can be other things, especially when you get into like hardcovers and stuff like that. There's often extra stuff that to be tacked on there.
Mhm.
And then as well, the print on demand publisher is going to take some kind of percentage, right?
Generally,
So,
like, this company specifically, it's a 30/70 split. So, let's say there's no printing involved, it's just a straight PDF. It's a $10 PDF, they get $3 every time someone buys one, you get $7. If it's a
right.
printed thing, then there's the print cost, and let's say the print cost is $4, and then you mark the price on the book to be, $20. Well, that means there's $16 left over, and they're gonna take 30% of that 16, and you're gonna get 70%, or sorry, yeah. Wait, what'd I say? Yeah,
Yeah,
$20
you said it
book,
right. They get 30,
$4.
you get
Right.
70
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
of the
So
16.
of
Yeah,
the 16, because they get all of the printing cost, you don't get any of it because you didn't print it. So that's the way it works. So you can set prices to whatever you want, understanding, of course, that if you set prices too high, people are gonna be like, I ain't gonna buy that. So that's
right,
always a thing that we always look at too. We always like to keep our stuff inexpensive and accessible. We're not making enough money to, quit our day jobs in this situation, right? But on the
right.
other hand, we're also not losing money either. So if you want to get more people to look at your product, don't price it crazy just because you think, well, you understand that if you price it reasonably, more people are going to be interested in taking a look at it. So that's kind
That's
of an
right.
important thing.
The final thing we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, and this is something where our own thoughts have been evolving, I think, of recent, is,
Also,
marketing.
we're not great at it. Just
Yes, this is a
FYI.
thing
Yeah,
we
yeah.
literally you started the podcast talking about being bad
Mhm.
at it, and I agree. We're kind of bad at this, but marketing is important, especially if you don't have Adam and I are lucky that we have, channels and built-in audiences and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so, what we do is obviously we do teasers and stuff like that out on, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that, leading up to the release of the book. We're thinking about changing this for the future, so stay tuned. But follow us on
Yeah.
socials. You're going to see stuff on socials. We'll probably just
Mhm.
extend the timeline and talk a little more openly earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe even we'll spoil stuff earlier in this very podcast. So, you should be subscribed.
Who is to say?
Um, but so we'll put out through social media is your friend, even though it's also somehow your enemy. Both of those things can be true.
Mhm.
But you want to get the word out. That's what we do. We put stuff out there, ask people to reshare. We tend to focus on art. I think art in general is a good one. Like that will generally get eyeballs on it. If you just put out some text saying I've got a new game coming this Friday, it's like no one's going to care. They're not going to read the text as they're on their infinite scroll or whatever. But if you
Exactly.
put out
Like,
like a really super cool piece of art, it makes them stop and go, "Whoa, that thing's neat." That's why you see people a lot in like Facebook posts when they ask a question, they'll be like picture unrelated but for attention. How many
yeah,
times have
yeah.
you seen that comment, right?
Exactly. If you just scroll by just some text on Blue Sky, Facebook, whatever, like you just scroll by it generally. But when there's like a picture, you look. It's just human nature, especially if, God forbid, if there's like a person and you can see their eyes in it, you're like even more likely to stop for a second and go, do I know that guy? Who is that guy? What's with that? And that kind of thing. So doing that kind of stuff is helpful. And like Vince said, both of us have got YouTube channels, and we cheated by basically spending 10 years of our lives building up these audiences so that we could then talk to people. Not everybody's got that, and we get that. But yeah, marketing is, it's, if you're doing something indie, I don't know that it would be a great idea to spend a whole bunch of money on marketing. That being said, it's also not a terrible idea. I
Well,
strongly
and
believe that,
there is a lot of free stuff you can do, right? You can like,
sure,
there's a lot of small podcasts. Like we had the people on from 1490 Doom, right?
right.
Like,
But the situation is also that I saw many different ads from them on Facebook. So they were
right.
spending actual real money on Facebook advertising to hit people who are into this game and this game or this thing or whatever. Because with Facebook
Yeah,
marketing,
yeah.
there's all kinds of ways you can direct it and segment it and all that kind of stuff. And so they did spend a decent amount of money on actual marketing. What's now crazy, however, is I've been told directly by Thomas Piernan, who from Trench Crusade, they spent initially no money on marketing and they raised
Right.
$6 million. So it's,
To be
but
fair, they
it's
also
when
have
you,
a lot of like, they have name cachet they can rely on, right?
exactly,
Like people know
absolutely,
who they are.
absolutely. They weren't coming out of left field, whereas Eric and Cody or Corey were relatively well not known.
Yeah, yeah. When you can put from the creator of Mordheim on
Right,
your
right. People are going, what
masthead,
now?
it's
Yeah,
pretty nice.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not the creator of Mordheim and you also don't have a huge marketing budget, then it's not something that you can expect to blow up. So it does become something where, posting things on, we tell people all the time that if you want to get into game design, the first thing you should try to do is build an audience. And eventually we're going to have an episode about trying to build an audience. But
That's right.
if you can write a blog well, if you can like do cool
Yep.
pictures and stuff like that, put them on your Instagram and get people to start following that, then you've got an audience that at some point down the road you can go, hey, if you like my pictures on Instagram of miniatures and things like that, I'm writing a game, you might want to take a look at it. It's a way to start. If it's not that, then it's spending money in most situations.
Yeah, I mean,
And
see if there's YouTube channels or podcasts that will have you on and talk to you. A lot of times, there's plenty of smaller channels that are always looking to share and boost stuff like that. So you can do that kind of thing. You can send PDFs to people oftentimes, and like
mhm,
along
mhm.
with like a little press release or something like that, and see if they'll review it for you. Like there are reviewers who will review stuff. You can take your game to conventions, large or
Yeah.
small, like TMX. A big part. We had literally people there showing off their new games. We had somebody there playtesting their game that's still in development, right? And ran a bunch of people through playtests.
Mhm.
And so like you can go to smaller conventions and run demos of your games and stuff like that. Absolutely.
Jordan, who's been coming to TMX since the beginning, and he would come and run people through this game that he had made called Country Road Z. And he would just be like, showing people, and it's a zombie game, and he would be running people through demos, and it was like a self-publishy thing. Well, now it's published through Modifius. Like it's a full-blown game you can get in stores, like Country Road Z from Modifius. And he still was he was at TMX again this year, and he was showing off that game, and then also doing he's got a couple new games in the fire too.
That's right. So anything like that you can do where you just get it in people's hands, get people talking, be art first and art focused, that kind of thing. That's why I like, if I had the choice between investing money in a bunch of raw marketing or investing money in paying a real artist to make good art, I'm going to put my money on the good artist to do good art every single time,
Every single
because
time.
that gives you a more appealing book. A good cover is important. Like that matters a lot.
Mhm.
Having an awesome cover that grabs people's attention. Like I know when we're little kids, you're told don't judge a book by its cover. That's the stupidest thing you ever heard. Of course, you judge a book by its cover. Everybody does. Don't pretend like you don't. Everybody does.
I've always said you can't judge a book by its cover, but you can get a gist of the plot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Um, I was recently reading a book by Moorcock, by the guy who did, Elric and all that.
Mhm.
And the cover of it has a wizard fighting a knight, and I was like, "Oh, cool! This will be a fun read." And it's a sci-fi novel about a fat scientist, and I was like, "What?" so, so it is true that sometimes the cover will mislead you, especially
It's
with those
true.
old sort of pulp novels.
Mhm.
Um, but a good cover is really important, that kind of thing. Good art becomes good marketing, becomes interest in your game, becomes an audience that then continues to share it out. It becomes hype, right? And that's like the very simple, straightforward pipeline.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. With that, I think you've more or less that's how we make a game, right? That's pretty much everything.
Just
Did we
just
forget anything there?
just do all those things and you'll be fine. I don't think so. I think that we've covered a lot of that stuff. You know, if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I saw your thing and whatever, I want to be would you want to be on a podcast?" Say yes. I don't care. Just say yes. Because it could be at any time that someone who listens to that podcast is all of a sudden someone who's like, "Oh," and then something happens. It's always something to think about. Um that's a big deal. And just being open to doing that stuff. I've gotten up in the middle of the night to talk to people in Australia on a podcast
Sure,
that
absolutely.
maybe got 100 listens, but you never know. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff I think is really important. And again, you know, go and again, you might bump into somebody at a show where you're running free demos, and that person maybe who knows what happens, but it's if you just go, well, no, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to just try to send emails to every YouTuber I ever met or ever heard of. I mean, you might hit with something. Don't get if you're going to send out emails, don't just send an email say I have this game. Would you be interested? You will not get a response.
That's right.
If you're going to send out an email, say I have this game. Let me know if you're interested. Here's a link to my website.
And
Good
also, here's the nice pitch of the thing. Your original
Right.
elevator pitch that grabs people,
Yeah.
grab them, sell the value, what differentiates you, right? That kind of thing. That nice, simple pitch. That like get it in a simple 3 sentences. Nobody wants to read a freaking novel. 3 sentences of value and differentiation.
The least amount of work that a person who you're trying to convince has to do, the better. The number of people who've emailed and said, "Oh yeah, I would love to do some art for you guys and everything like that," and then don't have a link to your like portfolio in any way, shape, or form. I'm not gonna like chase you down, but if you just had
Right.
said, "I would love to work with you guys. Here's a link to my portfolio," boom, you're way ahead of the game because I might be sitting on the toilet and go, "Well, let's take a look." You know what I mean? It's. But if I have to email you back and say, "Okay, I've never heard of you or anything about you, but yes, let's talk about," that's not a thing. So you want to give people, especially if you're reaching out, like the least amount of like road bumps, like so that it just they can find out, and then they can maybe decide or not. Maybe something strikes them and they go from there. So
Make it as easy as possible for people to to show interest in your game, which
Mhm.
because that's how they become fans of your game. That's
Mhm.
right.
Absolutely. Well, this is a long one, but I think that we got it all.
I think we got it all.
Cool. Well, thanks for checking out this long episode, this long 10th episode of the Snarlcast. We hope we're able to teach you something. If you've got suggestions for future topics or anything else, hit us up on the comments if you're watching this on or listening to this on YouTube, or send us a message or whatever. Please check out our website at snarlingbadger.com/snarlcast for more information and for more episodes. And you can also follow us on your podcast software of choice. Leave a review if you get the chance, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you much.